Welcome to the Personal Brand Era podcast. I'm your host, Ella Ray, and I'm excited to talk to Christa Coetzee today. She's a life and relationship coach, and I would really love to know, how did you get into coaching? What made you decide to get into coaching and specifically relationships and psychology?
Uh, it's a long story, but I'll try and keep it short. I do believe I was one of those people that were born to serve people in this industry. So I was fortunate. I grew up with parents. My mother was a social worker. My dad was a religious leader. So I come from a background of serving people and being quite involved in what people need and from very young, I used to run from the school and go to my mom and say, there's this person, this child at school that needs help. What can I say to them? So it was a natural inclination that just came to me. And then over the years, I also part of my, if you get to know me a bit better, I had wonderful parents. They were the best parents that they could be, juggling community work, family life. And they really made us feel safe. But between all of the juggling and all of this running around, somehow they drifted apart. And I was 13 when I realized that they were going to get divorced. It was a shock to all of us. And but I'm also one of the fortunate ones of where they got back together. And I witnessed how they were before and how they managed to put things together and how they worked on themselves as individuals and really what is necessary to make a relationship healthy and to connect with one another. So that I didn't realize at that stage that that was going to be such a pivotal moment in my life of shaping me for what I was going to do later on in life. And so I started out as studying social work, following mom's footsteps, and then psychology, and over the years into sexology. And I have just found this absolute passion to work with people, to help them to build healthy relationships, because I've seen firsthand experienced what happens when you don't work on relationships. And I've seen what's possible if you really have your focus right and you get in there and start taking real care and responsibility of your relationship. So that's really a long story, but that's how I got into it. And I'm passionate about relationships because I do believe we all deserve to live in happy, loving relationships.
I absolutely love
So
that you turned your personal experience with your parents into something that would actually help a lot of people. And from what I think, you serve mainly women, is that right?
Not really only women. I do work with a lot of men as well, and I work with couples as well. But in the coaching, I've really embarked on focusing for now really on the woman. And the reason for that is women tend to reach out a lot more for help. They tend to be the ones that, and I think it comes with being girls, being women from very young. We were close, we hold one another, we cuddle with one another and say, you know what, come on, I'll help you, and we lean on one another. So we tend to reach out to community a lot more. And I do find that in relationships there's often one that's the messenger, the one that says, hey, we need some help. And women tend to be the ones to reach out and be willing to step into that. There's a bit less, I think, ego involved. There's a lot more of an emotional need that makes them more approachable in terms of reaching out and say, hey, putting my hand up and say, I need some help. And that's where I'm at. So I definitely would not close the door when a man approached me and says, I need some help. And I've helped many men on their own without their partners to actually work on themselves and take that step. So the same framework that I use for women, I use for men, I use for couples, I use for all relationships because it's fundamentals. But at this point in time, you're absolutely right. That's my focus, to reach out to the women, bring them in. Let's make this world a better place. and it's easy for us women to take hands and actually just connect.
I fully agree with you. And when I think about the current situation in relationships, particularly, which we will get into a little bit later in the interview, I hope, I can imagine that there are a lot of misconceptions that women generally have when it comes to relationships. Men, of course, they do as well. But let's focus on the woman here. What kind of misconceptions do you meet on a daily basis when women come to you and they tell you about their problems, and that we need to address in this interview so people are more aware of it?
One of the things, and I would like to take one step back, and I think that's where a lot of the problems that we find that's happening in relationships come in. These societal expectations, certain gender roles that have been assigned to women or to men, and that used to be the traditional way of doing. And somehow, when society evolved and with the emancipation of women and women's rights, in the work industry, that's been uplifted, but in the relationship realm, that hasn't really been brought back home in terms of what does equality look like. So there's often an expectation of a woman to be the nurturer, to not to put her own needs behind or lower down the ranking, that it's her responsibility to keep her husband happy. His needs come first, children's need come first in a relationship to work. And I think that's one of the big things of where there's an expectation that if the woman is not giving the husband enough sex, that the relationship is not going to work, which it's very simplified to think of it that way. We need to really look, and that's my whole approach to say, is how do we bring the equality back into relationships where there's equal value. It doesn't mean that the one is more important than the other. We all have unique individual beings, our personalities, qualities that come in, and we need to find a way to bring that into place. But a lot of women feel that their needs are not valued or validated. They don't have the right to feel guilty about that. There's also an expectation that they have to go and be the career woman, but when they come back home, they are still the nurturer, so they should still be the house manager. And it all comes down to her and getting to the point of where, excuse me, if this is what a relationship is all about, I'm out of here.
That's the tendency that we can see right now, right? Men, but also women tend to say, I don't need this, right? And I don't need men, I don't need a marriage, I don't need relationships, right? And you mentioned equality. And of course, I've thought about relationships for all my life. And it's one area that I'm just like you, very passionate about. I'm not a relationship coach, but I'm enormously passionate about this area of life because so much depends on our relationships and how well we build relationships, first of all, with ourselves, right? And then secondary with everyone else in our lives. And what does equality mean in the sense of between women and men? Let's take it in a marriage or relationship.
I think first important things would say it could potentially look different for different people. So I don't think we need a cookie cutter situation of where to say that is what the man should do and this is what the woman should do. It's for me, the way, if I look in terms of equality and the way I look at relationships, is we have actually three relationships. So we have the one individual, the other individual, and then the us. So it's the me, and the we. And we have to realize that we are different. We've got different needs, we've got different wants, we've got different journeys, we've got different ideas about life, we've got different perceptions about life. And somehow we need to make sure that both connect. Find a way that we can support one another, stand next to one another. So it's not that the one is more important than the other. It means that both have got equal value to bring into the relationship, to build the relationship. What it looks like in every specific individual or different relationship that would be different, because that's an agreement that two people will come to, and to say, you know what, I don't like doing housework, and the other will say, I don't like garden work, and say, okay, is it okay if I do the garden work and you do the housework, as a very simplified way, but to come to say, let's stop with certain specific role expectations and approach the relationship is to say, well, this is a team effort. It's a team effort where there's two individuals that are coming together to join hands to live a life together. And how are we going to make it work that both are equally satisfied and happy? And that is what equality looks like for me.
And I love that approach because it really comes down to the goals that this particular couple would set for themselves, each individually, right? The woman has to know kind of where does she want to go in her life? What does she want to achieve in her life? What are her values, boundaries, standards, all those things that I think especially young women are very, very much struggling with and falling prey to certain types of men who would use them in a certain way and abuse them even in a certain way, which they have to then go out of this relationship and try to heal themselves and all that stuff, and have difficulty really to build any other relationship because the first one was so damaging, right? And so I think it's very crucial at this point, now that you mention this, to remind even young women about the standards and values and goals that she has in life, and to not bend for any type of men just to fit the shoe and have a check mark on her life's balance sheet, so to speak, that she has a relationship. I think this is also something that I noticed a lot, that people just want to be in a relationship just to be in one, right? But it does not make any sense, right? And these two people are not even connected with each other. There's not love, no respect, no boundaries, no standards, no nothing, right? And a lot of people are very much struggling with this. And when women come to you, what are the main challenges that they are facing?
I love what you were saying, because I do believe it's so important that we start, and that's exactly what I work with, to say is, let's start with yourself first, because you are an equal. A relationship is a sum of two. It means that there's two people that need to know who they are and what they want, and stand up for that. One of the misconceptions earlier that we were talking is that women feel that they have to dim their light so that they can make the man the head of the house. And often the frustrations, coming to your question, is when they walk in, that they say they've lost the sense of themselves. Mm-hmm. They know that they're a mother. They know that they are a wife. They know that they're a businesswoman. They know that they are all these status symbols, all these roles that they fulfill, but they don't know anymore who they are. And that is one of the big concerns that come through. The other one, that they often feel unheard and misunderstood. That they often feel that they are only there to be the house manager and to serve everybody else, but what about them? They come in, and in terms of sexual disparity, what comes into is the moment that they start feeling unfulfilled, their sexual desire drops, because they don't want to allow anybody to give almost another part of themselves away. And I think that's overgiving has been the trend underlying, not knowing where to draw the boundaries, not knowing what they need, not knowing what they deserve, because they never ever stood still to really look at that and to say, where do I stand? What is it that I want? And then to start communicating where they want to stand in the relationship as well. Because if we step into relationships, we have to realize, and I sit with this so often, when people say, but what about me? And what about me? I say, yes, you know what? The moment we step into a relationship, it's not all about me. It's then about we. And that does not mean it's not about me. It's fine nuances that we work with to say it's not all about me, it's about we, but in the we I am too. And it's important for me to stand in my place, to step into my place, and step into it completely, because you deserve that. You were chosen because of your qualities, so why in the world are you dimming them?
I think it even starts very, very early. The problems that many women have, not even recognizing their own value, that they struggle with then in every relationships, choosing the wrong partners over and over again, not knowing why they are choosing them, right? And I think it really starts very early in childhood when the girl does not get proper parenting, I would say, in managing her emotions, in managing her boundaries. How does the parent respond to the boundaries that every kid has, right? Or the girl has? And I think from there, from her childhood, she really intensively learns how people will treat her, right? And so she will either learn that her boundaries are being respected or that they are being broken down. So this conversation is not only for women that are already adults and in relationships and in marriages, but I think at the same time, it is also a conversation worth listening to by parents and by mothers, particularly, because the circle closes, right? If you choose the wrong partner in your life, you will continue that evil cycle that you have been brought up with, and you will give that same cycle to your children, particularly to your daughter. So I think it's really crucial for mothers to really listen in and tune into this particular conversation to find out how they can build more healthy relationships, right? And maybe it's also important to mention why it is important for women to start recognizing and embracing their own value inside of or within a relationship. What does it make and what kind of purpose does it have?
I love when you made referral to we continue a cycle, and it's so important to say is we don't have, our past does not determine our future unless we live in it. And if I'm going to be upset, didn't quite like the way I was treated or raised, somewhere in your point in your life, you have to come to a point and to say is, I didn't like that. How do I change it now? And then the crucial part, and I think this is the part where I relate with women, and I think we play such an important role as the mother of your children. You brought them into this world, and you have a responsibility to talk to them, to show them, to be vulnerable in front of them, to say is, these are things that happened in my life, and this is what I have learned, and why this is important for you to take care of notice of. And that's where my mother played quite a big role in my life, because during this whole process, as she was the one, and I must say my father also, he was amazing, and we had long conversations, but it was for me crucial to break certain patterns. And my mom would sit with me and talk to me, and to say, to actually share with me that these were things that she felt prior to the divorce, and this is what she's fundamentally working on now, of how to step into her power, not to overpower. And I think we have often a misconception of that. When I step into my power, it doesn't mean that I'm trying to be more powerful than you. It's not that. I'm stepping into my power so that you, once you stepped into your power, can meet me. And then we become together powerful. And we need to break those cycles. We all make mistakes. Our parents make mistakes. We all do things, make choices in our lives that we think, oh, why did I do that? I shouldn't do that. And we often, and I get so many people, women that come and say to me is, I need to stop making the same decisions. I need to stop attracting the same partner. I need to stop doing that, but I don't quite know where and how to do that. And that's where I light up, because working with these women, working and really starting to guide them through this and really step into their power with love. Step into their power because they want a loving relationship or relationships where they are valued. That's so crucial, because that's fundamentally the lesson that we teach the younger generation, but it's also taking control of our own destiny, our own happiness.
And I think this willingness has to be there prior, before you start any kind of relationship, right? Uh, if you are not willing to look at yourself first of all, right, and try to see what's going on inside of you that might not be fitting in any type of relationship, right? Without that willingness and honesty and authenticity and vulnerability with yourself, I think it will be very, very hard to step into any future relationship and have success with it. And you mentioned your parents once again, and I'm very curious, what did they do differently the second time around, if you feel comfortable sharing it? Because if someone decides to break apart, because to divorce is something very, very major in a person's life, right? I can imagine. So there must be humongous reasons for that, right? Huge reasons that they thought they could not overcome. But then again, when they decided to come together, there must be reasons that they couldn't live without, right? That they could not be continuing to live without each other. So what were these reasons, and what did they do differently the second time around?
I think that the one thing is they broke away from the old passed on dynamic of the one is above the other. So that was the one thing. When they broke back and they said, and each had the opportunity and took the time to really do introspection and to say, is what was my contribution to this relationship not working, instead of looking at the other one and to say, but you not doing this or that. So that would be one of the crucial moments to say, is when you're in a relationship somewhere, we need to take ownership. Really to step in and to say is, yes, the other person also contributed, but what do I have control over? I have control over how I step up. I have control over what I do, whether it was good or bad. So that would be the individual accountability, ownership that was taken. And the other thing that is crucial is, it's amazing, because they drifted apart before the time. And at that stage, my mother was not full-time working. So she was the religious leader's wife, and she was looking after the 4 children. So she had a busy life raising 4 children. I still take my hat off to her, of how you navigate through all those 4 different personalities at the different stages. But then what happened was, when they didn't have time, they started living separate lives to a certain extent. I always said the congregation had more of my father than what we as children had, because evening times, when it's family time, he was out taking care of the congregation. So when they got divorced, my mother was forced to go and work. So the interesting part is before they didn't have time. Now, now she's got a full-time career. He's got a full-time career. There's 4 children, and you still want to build and make the relationship work. So they prioritized their relationship. They prioritized to make sure to say, yes, the kids need attention. Yes, the finances need attention. Yes, the household need attention. The career need attention. But you know what? The two of us are the foundation of this whole family. So we need attention. And they're really taking time out for one another, for their relationship, making sure that they stay connected. and not just taking it for granted. I hear so often where the one says, yeah, but it's my husband or it's my wife. They know, they should understand. These other people won't understand. So what we do is we actually start giving away our time and our attention to other people instead of prioritizing and building the relationship in a healthy way. So there was definitely an empowerment that happened. That was, my mom often said to me, in a certain way, she was grateful, although it was very painful for the divorce, because it forced her to take ownership. It forced her to step into her power. And in a certain way, it helped my dad to also step into his power as a husband, as a partner, as a father, instead of this status figure that everybody else saw. So that was definitely having very brutal, honest conversations, really brutally honest, saying what it is that I need, communicating. My mom used to say to me, and I think she knew that this child of hers was way too intense, too grown up, too young in her days. So I was always worried about other people and are they going to get divorced from young. And my mom used to say to me, and these words ring true every day in my life, and she said, make yourself known. And if we just take that and to say, if I want or expect or need my partner to do this or don't do certain things, I have the responsibility to make myself known. How in the world would they know? They will work from their own perception. They will work from previous experiences. When it worked, it doesn't mean that it works with this individual now. And we need to really take ownership. Relationships work because people pay attention.
And what I'm sensing you are saying is basically paying attention to when you are choosing any type of partner, that this partner has some level of organizational skills, right? Because organizing a relationship takes time, takes skills, takes mental capacity also. So if two confused people come together and they are very spontaneous types, it might not work out if the spontaneity does not go towards the same goal, right? So if one person is very spontaneous and the other one is very organized, for example, a relationship will also not work very well, because the organized one tends to want more stability in a relationship and the spontaneous one wants more freedom, right? So they will always clash together. So from what you are saying, based on your parents' experience, is that a certain level that should be somewhat equal for both. And probably that's why they say you should be equally yoked, right? Some level of organizational skills you should bring into the relationship, or at least the willingness to learn them, right? If you don't have them, you have to have the willingness to kind of acquire those skills. And I think this is really important to digest that information and to make that decision before you enter into a relationship, to really assess yourself. What am I capable of? What are my skills? What kind of value do I bring into a relationship, so that you know beforehand what you have to expect from the other one, right? Or what you would love to have, right? Because that part may be missing, right? And that's the most fruitful relationship, to my knowledge at least. If you have a certain set of skills, right, you can choose a partner with which it will work very well if they have a completely different set of skills in certain areas, because then you can come together and then you can elevate this whole ship, so to speak, into the next level, right? But for the everyday life, as you say, challenges will arise with housework, with work, with who does pay the bills, all that stuff, right? They will arise. So both people need to have the same level of skills when it comes to that.
I think the interesting part, and this is, it's always fascinating to me when we look at things in a very understanding and academic way. The hard reality is that people are different. So, and we come with different skill sets. And we come with different personalities, and we come with different ways of doing things. I do find that relationships where people are not that extremely different or opposite makes it a bit easier to navigate. It's when we are extreme different personalities and we're sitting on, we have different needs, it's a bit more challenging to bring it in. But if there's a willingness to accommodate that and say, and I've been working a lot lately with them to say, can we separate our relationship from the daily functioning tasks? Because if we can do that, and we say is, you know what, these are non-negotiables. They need to happen. The children need to be fetched and carried. The house needs to be cleaned, and the washing needs to be done, and the grocery shopping needs to happen. And there's all these functional tasks. Let's jump in teamwork, make it happen, and then we can connect. Because 3/4 of the time, if not more, people start fighting about functional tasks. I'm frustrated because you're not doing this or that or that. When you step into living together, you know, loving one another is easy. Living together while you're loving somebody is not that easy. And that needs a certain amount of skill set. We need to have the same vision. To say is, what do I expect of this relationship? I want to feel loved. I want to feel understood. I want to have good communication. Then we need to do those things to put it into place. Otherwise, it's not going to just happen. So I think for me, the important is, yes, if the gap is not too extreme, it's easier to navigate. The bigger the difference is, the more challenging it is, because we somehow are sitting like on a two extremes, and we have to shout to get to the other one's attention because we're not on the same page. It's not impossible. If we have, and I always refer to the 4 A's as a very strong fundamentals for a healthy relationship. And the one is affection, attention, appreciation, and acknowledgement. We need to know that the other one, we need to appreciate their differences. We need to accept them for who they are. Doesn't mean that we have to say is, this is who I am, but somewhere, remember, in a relationship, we need to find a way to connect. So there will be levels of compromise. I have to bear in mind that the other one is not like me, doesn't think exactly like me, doesn't do things exactly the way I do. But where is it that we have the same goal and we need to meet one another? Because you're not on your own. And we need to respect that the other person is different. And I think that's valuing one another, valuing what you bring in, and really nurturing that, supporting that, because that's what relationship. We should be one another's cheerleaders. When we do certain things, we always need to say is, remember, hold one another's hands, reach out, stay close enough that you can connect. But each one need to also fulfill their full potential.
So what you just mentioned is what goes back again to the relationship that you have with yourself, right? And I think this is one part or aspect that you focus a lot in your work, because this is where everything kind of starts. If you know how you can foster and maintain the relationship that you have with yourself, it will be so much easier to have any other relationship in your life. And
absolutely,
then it will not really matter, is this a man, is this your child, is this your parents? You will just know, based on your values, your boundaries, your standards, your love language, and whatever aspects we want to count into this pot, so to speak. You will know how to navigate because you have explored everything that is important to you, and you have learned how to communicate all of this, first of all, with yourself. So maybe let's shift into this direction. How do you approach this self relationship, specifically for women who have the goal of having healthy relationships?
I think what is so important the goal of healthy relationships, the goal of really moving forward in your life is to start at a point and to say, to really dig in and explore in yourself of what are things that are no-goes for you. What are realizing when you feel emotionally, physically, psychologically violated. We are often so focused on what other people need, and we don't quite know how to dig in and stop for a moment to say, hey, I didn't like that. But because it's the good girl syndrome, it's the good woman syndrome, you know what, we find excuses and understanding for why the other person has done that, but we forget to stop for a moment and understand yourself and say, but I need to say, I need to draw the line. I am the one that sets the tone of how I will be loved, of how I will be respected. If I don't respect my own boundaries, how in the world can we expect other people's to respect it? Because if I keep quiet, if I just all the time take it for the sake of peace, I'm actually communicating to the other one that it's okay to treat me that way. It's okay. And the flip side of the coin is the same as the truth. Is if I treat my partner or my child or any one of my friends a certain way, and they take it and then they never tell me that they don't appreciate it, how in the world must I know? So if we want any healthy relationship, it's not so much of that you have to have it all figured out, because I think we all are figuring it out as we go through life. Um, if I look at relationships and how they evolve, there's relationships when they are starting to date, and then there's relationship where they are just getting married or they're living together, and then they move into the phase of where there's children, and after the children, you know what, it's a first time mom, first time dad, then you go, it's evolving. There's parts of it that gets awakened as we go through different phases in our lives. So we don't have to have it all figured out before we start a relationship. No, not at all. We should be willing to listen to ourselves, really say, what are things that trigger me? What are things that I don't like? What is it that I want? And if I don't have the skills, let me go and find them. And never stop talking. Never stop connecting and checking in with one another. To say is, hey, you know what? I never realized, but this way, when you speak to me, this is actually how I feel, and I don't like that. Or when I do that to you, I'm sure I make you feel that way, and really that's not my intention. So how can we be better? So we need to stay in touch with one another. And that's why I love when I call it and say, disconnect to reconnect. We need to break away from the disconnect. We need to be connected, makes it a lot easier. So we need to find the way of where we connect. And where we connect is where we are open enough with one another I stand up and to say, this is what I need. I take ownership and I bring this to the table.
You mentioned also before that it was about power, right? Either staying silent is one problem, and not communicating at all, which has their reasons in probably some traumatic experience in the past for that person, that they decided to not talk about problems because it was safer to not do it, right? Even though it's not safe at all, because you're ruining the relationships by being silent. And then you mentioned also power, this power struggle. And I find it very interesting, something that I did not quite see as a child. I grew up in Asia, and we had a very distinct and different type of community, if you will, a very, very small village where it was very traditional, if you will. I did not see any type of power struggles between couples. And we had a lot of couples in this village, right? And young children, just like us. And so the woman was always in her power. And that was the most interesting part for me to observe, that the woman was very much in her feminine, so completely different from the Western world, in her feminine, but still in her power, right? So she knew she had something to say, so she did not have to go to a power source or power tools, right? Whether it is linguistic or other means of power, to get what
Yes.
she wanted. But the women in our village were able to get it from a feminine energy perspective. So I was enormously surprised when I came to Germany when I was a little kid and see a flip side of it, seeing rather aggressive women, rather women who wanted to achieve power levels or certain amounts of power over men, which was like, what's going on here, right? And
Mm, mm,
so, how can a woman recognize that she might be using any kind of power tools to overpower her partner? And how can she go back into her feminine power, into knowing that she can get anything that she wants by communicating it with empathy, love, and connection? Actually, the thing that you just mentioned, reminding herself of the goal that we have together, instead of fighting about these basic daily things like who did the dishes.
mm. I think it's so important. I think one of the I think in the westernized world, I think there's been, with the emancipation and all of those things, and a lot of oppression that's happened, and it's been not women not felt that they weren't heard, and we heard the whole different movements. Anything that's radical is just an indication. It's people that are shouting to say, can we have this please restored? But we are in extremes. We find restoration when we connect, when we start hearing one another, when we acknowledge one another. And the moment that I do something, say something, and I provoke a defense or attack reaction, the chances that I'm coming in with a power that's not my authentic power, that's not my loving power, is very big. We need to acknowledge. That's why we need to be aware of what we do. Look at yourself, look at the other person's reaction, response to you, and ask yourself, did they hear me as threatening? Did they hear me in a way that they feel that I have to now defend or attack? And if you have that, you as a person can say, whoa, that was not my intention. Can I take that back? Can I rephrase it? This is what I mean. And that's what you're referring to about that feminine energy. That's powerful. Step into your authentic being, the being that wants to have a loving relationship. Don't get caught up in attack and defense, because that's not the solution. Attack and defense is purely a symptom or an indication that somebody needs to feel that they need to be heard, and they're making it very well known to the other person. And if I have to raise my voice, and I often find that and I can see that, as if I have to raise my voice, why am I raising my voice? Because I feel I'm not being heard. If I stop talking, why am I stopping to talk? Because I don't see any way forward anymore. I feel that there's no way of solution, so I'd rather back off and silently have resentment. That's not healthy. So we need to start looking at why we're doing what we're doing. And that gives us clues and cues of where are we stepping outside that loving, authentic power. Otherwise, it becomes status power. I need to be in above you. I need you to be below me. We're talking status. And that's not healthy. It's not. Nobody likes to feel pressed down. Nobody likes to be shouted at. Nobody likes. well, I think a lot of people like to be at the top and actually dictate what's going on. But is that fulfilling on the emotional level? Are they really getting what they want? Or do they feel that they have to just always take the lead and just nobody else cares? And there's inequality that's happening, and those emotions are all the time being raised up. So do I find that going in extreme movements to say I'm done with women or I'm done with men, what are we doing? We're actually purely just buying into a negative. We're buying into belief systems that to say, you know what, that's not good, that will never work, we are too different. Well, the world is different. If we want to live in harmony, we have to find a way to live in harmony. And the way to live in harmony is where two people sit next to one another and they can be who they are, who they were meant to be, and take ownership and take responsibility. Then it's possible. But there's too much ego and too much pain that's been left unresolved. But if you are willing, if you really want to live a fulfilling life, a joyful, elated life, you have to become part of the team. And the most important part is you have to make sure that you become fit and do your part in the relationship, because then it becomes, I love talking about saying is, then I'm not there to convince you, I'm there to convey. I'm here to share with you, this is my feeling, this is what I would like us to do. I'm not here, and I'm doing it, I'm leading by example. And there's a lot less resistance than when I'm there trying to tell you should do this. I'm trying to convince you that's the right way to do. We have to go see a coach. We have to go see this. We have to sort this out. And then say, no, but I'm not ready to say, okay, well, I don't know about you, but I actually need some answers. So I'm going to go and find out how I can show up better. And immediately that's less threatening. It becomes a bit scary for the partner to say, but she's going to do things and I don't have control over that and I don't know what's happening there. Well, then at least immediately the relationship, somewhere the shifts happened to make it healthier. And then usually people start shaping up because now I've got something to lose.
The funny thing is that when I listen to women nowadays, they are complaining so much about their partners, about what's going on, and that they never change, and that they don't see any way out. And the moment that you actually go into your feminine energy, you start receiving, right? They want to receive so much, but in the moment when they step into the masculine, taking or demanding, right, going into that power struggle again, they will never receive, because that type of energy is not empty enough, so to speak, to receive that type of thing that they really want. And you have spoken about the equality then between those two partners. And I think the equality or the inequality can first of all be seen inside of yourself, right? If there is any type of inequality between your feminine and masculine energy, then you will mirror that, so to speak, in your relationships, right? It cannot work because you have not established equality inside of yourself. So you cannot by any chance mirror that with your partner.
Very valuable point. I hear you. And I think it's so, there's not enough said about that. It takes responsibility. It takes effort. Doesn't mean it takes hard work. It takes input. Things, you know what, we want to lose weight. But you're not going to lose weight if you just eat pizza every night. I want to be fit. But you know what? Just signing up to the gym is not going to make me fit. I have to actually go and do the exercise. So relationships are exactly the same thing. our own joy and happiness in our life, our relationships, it's the same thing. We can't just expect it to miraculously work, because people change, people are different. We have to make it work, and how we do that is by having input. And I know it's challenging. We all have only 24 hours a day. None of us are privileged to have more. So it's what we do with the time, how effective, where we prioritize. That's where the difference comes in.
If you would
Making
say,
sure that I have me time, we time, family time, career time. It needs to be prioritized. And a lot of women I have experienced is because they are so busy being the carer and giving to everybody, that and filling their time with that, and that's the nurturing part that feels all fed by it, that then when somebody says, but what about you? Yes, I've lost myself, they say, okay, take an hour and go do something. But I don't even know what to do. We have disconnected so much from that. And that's why we don't prioritize it, because then I sit with an hour and I don't know what to do with it. And that makes me feel empty. And that's quite scary. So it's on so many levels we need to make the shift. On so many levels we need to make the changes. And taking charge of yourself and really dig deep is important to step into your own happy power.
what I notice is that women have that perception of, first of all, feeling that they have lost themselves in some ways, and or maybe not yet lost themselves when they have, for example, young children. It's somewhat okay, but it's the starting point, I feel, because before children are there and the relationship is kind of bouncing back and forth, you are, as a woman, kind of fulfilled with yourself to the extent that you are willing to grow, right, as a person. But as soon as children come in, you start to lose yourself very quickly with every child that comes in, because you prioritize the children, which is right, which is completely, it needs to be done, right? There's no way around it. You have to be willing to create that type of gap for the first couple of years until your children can be somewhat independent, right? But then I feel like women are starting to lose themselves in a very bad way. And I hear that from older women, especially when they go into menopause, kind of that stage, that they all of a sudden, kids are out of the house and they realize, who am I? What am I supposed to do now? They might have still their jobs and they might still have that type of connection and fulfillment coming in from that side, but that is not the most fulfilling side of life, I feel. So as soon as the children and the relationships are kind of falling away, they don't know what to do. And what I notice is that younger women on the other hand are taking the self-care routine into a wrong direction. And I might get a lot of hate comments for this one. But I think it's important to address this, because what women tend to do in the name of self-care is going out, doing their nails, doing their hair, taking bubble baths, going out with their friends or whatever, even though that's a good thing. Socializing is always good, right, with your friends. But doing all this superficial stuff that they then label as self-care will not prevent them, in my opinion, from that feeling of being lost and not knowing yourself anymore when they are in their older stages of life. Because this input, doing your hair, doing your nails, is all okay, but it's not self-care, in my opinion. It's rubbish. It's not self-care. It's taking care of your external world, right? External field. But what are you actually doing to get to know yourself on the internal world, in your internal side? right? And if you don't do that, you will always feel lost, no matter where you go, no matter what you do, right? Whether the kids are still in the house or they are already out of the house. And I think we need to change that paradigm and the definition of self-care a little bit, especially for women, because they are so focused on the outside world. How do I look? Am I beautiful? Am I slim enough? And, how do I look in this dress and all that stuff? I think this is so superficial. It does not serve women in any way. And I think we need to drive that consciousness more into serving ourselves into for our inner world, right? Embellishing the inner world, doing things that are enriching our mental health, our emotional health, so that by the end of our lives, we know exactly who we are, right? We have done the work and we know exactly where we've come from and where we want to go.
I agree with you in the sense of we need to find the balance. We really need to find the balance. If we are only looking after the external, we're out of balance. If we're only looking after the internal, we're also out of balance. So I think there's something self-care on this level. It improves your feeling about yourself. The way I show up, the way I look, really taking care of my body, so that because I like doing that and I'm enjoying doing that. But that cannot be the only level of self-care that happens. We need to take care of where we're going, why we're going there, what are we doing to get me to that next level. And the part of that, it's so easy to rely on the external to find another person to find you appealing. And that's where we start. The difference in psychology when we start talking about that is the external locus of control and the internal locus of control. Externally is my partner needs to make me happy. I need to look beautiful for my partner. I hear my partner saying, but you've picked up too much weight. After the children, you're not the same person anymore. Those are all external stuff. That's when women start running around and saying, okay, I need to do all of these physical things to be more appealing. But that's who determines whether you're okay or not. Are you giving the power to the external person to determine if you're okay or not? Or are you saying is, I go from the inside out, I take charge of me, and then when I get the compliments or the attention from the external world, it's supporting, it's not defining. And I think there's a difference between it. To say is, what defines whether I'm okay or not? Is it my external that defines me? Because the sad part is the external shifts and changes. And when you're in your midlife, you do not have the body of an 18-year-old anymore. If you've had a couple of children in between, you know what? You've got a mommy body. Some women are lucky, they quickly return back to their original sizing. The majority of women, there's definitely shifts and changes that happens. So we have to realize that I need to be okay with me. The external world can then support that or say, no, you know what, we don't like that, but that doesn't define you. Your own true power really lies within. So we need to nurture the external. I get that. We need to look after our external, our bodies. But the internal needs to define you, not the external.
I find it interesting how you phrased it just now. That when you define for yourself who you are and when you are okay or you feel okay with yourself, you kind of fill that gap, right? If we call it a gap, right? Or a space that needs to be filled after all, because we will navigate based on what's in that space. So if you already define it for yourself, nothing can replace it anymore. So as you said, if externally someone gives you a compliment or even says you're ugly, right, for example, happens on social media all the time, right, even though
I
you're the
know.
most beautiful woman in the world, right, it can happen to you, right? So whenever that comes in, it will just be reflected back. It has no space in it, right? But if it's empty, if you never define when you actually feel of yourself being okay and how you want to feel, right, with yourself, with your body, with your external and internal world, anything that will come from the outside world will find place, will fill that space, right? And then you can barely do anything about it, because removing that junk, right, out of your life and out of your mental and emotional space is quite difficult, because it's not you who put it in there, so you initially don't know how to get rid of it. So it's really good that you take the time and actually define for yourself who you are, how you feel okay looking, right? Not some man defining it for you, right? And I feel like women are in the right direction when it comes to that, right? They are calling themselves queens and all that stuff, right? And I know my words and all that, all the affirmations that are throwing around in this world, right? They are going into that direction. And I'm oftentimes wondering if it is solid enough for them, or if it is just a trauma response in some way to behave in that way, and that there in reality is nothing solid in that space. So I'm kind of concerned for these women who are just throwing around with these affirmations, but not really defining it, so that they don't cry actually when someone on social media or wherever, any hater comes at them and throws anything at them, that they still stand firmly in their pride and in their femininity and beauty as they are, right? Because that's something that I get a lot from other women, that they struggle with haters on social media a lot. So defining that space for yourself will actually save you from being out of balance, or being crucified, if you will,
Um,
right, on the spot, right? Your emotional life for the next hours is basically done, right? You are on a roller coaster, right? So this is really important what you just said.
we need to really know what I stand for. And I think in social media, the real challenging part that we have, it's a harsh world. You open yourself up to so many people's opinions. What is important in my own life, and whenever I do show up in anything I do, is to realize, why am I doing it? Why am I saying this? What is my intention with this? And then having to realize that some people will not share my same opinion. Some people might have their own ways of dealing with certain things, might come at me harsh. But if I really know who I am and what I stand for, and I come with love, then I can see it when it's not coming from a place of love. And that makes it, it makes, then life becomes fun. Then life becomes a lovely place to be in. And we need to really step into that.
And I think you start seeing a different side of life when you are operating from that type of level of frequency, if you want to take that. You have a 5-day challenge coming up, right? Can you tell us more about this?
What I do, and yes, I do. I have a 5-day challenge. I call it the Reconnected challenge. It's 5 days, 1 hour a day. And it's to kickstart it. I call it 5 days to reset, revive, and reconnect. And it's kickstart your thriving relationships. And I have women from different, there's some women that actually come and they want to general relationships. Other come to me and they say, I want my intimate relationship. to reconnect there. I want to connect with myself. I want to find, but how do I start? And they're filled with overwhelm. They know that there's a shift that needs to happen, and they know that they need to dig into it, taking ownership and address these things. They all come with different frustrations and challenges in their lives, where they felt a disconnect, where they felt they've lost a sense of their self. And in the 5 days, I help you to give you the opportunity to get to know me, work with me, and in the 5 days to help you to kickstart the process, to give you some tools and tips to start the process. Because once we start a process, it's like a wheel. If the wheel is stuck, we know the wheel needs to move. And to get it to move is a lot of difficulty, and on our own we battle. But the moment that we put our energy there and you start getting the first move, then momentum can start happening. And that's where the transformation then happens. So I'm super excited when I do these challenges, and I do them at different intervals. But yes, there's one coming up, and whoever is interested is welcome to contact me and jump on and see for themselves, to actually just start taking action. Because it's only when we take action that transformation can happen, that change will happen. Dreaming about it, hoping that it will change, it's not going to just change.
So true.
So I hope, and sometimes women will say to me, I think it's just a phase. We must just hang in there. It will pass again. We've been in this phase before. It's not that bad. I get that all the time. The reality is, the sooner the better. If you feel that there's a disconnect on any level, and you feel that your elation, your joy is somehow not there in your life, it's never too early. It's often rather too late. But even then, you can still do it. But we need, the sooner the better, that you can get there, because you've got one life. And to live a fulfilling life is your birthright.
And those that you just mentioned, that that's just a phase, and we've been there, and we will make it work as we did in the past, is just a confirmation for the fact that it does not work, right? The solutions that you've come up with are not working because you are struggling again. And those are evil ones that will trick many people into believing that they can make it work, right? But yeah, I would always recommend to contact any type of professionals who can guide you, because it's sometimes very hard to guide yourself, especially when it comes to relationships and very intricate things and very deep things that you might not be aware of. So a professional will always know what's going on and how to guide you out of it. And such a 5-day challenge is really amazing, because as you said, it will start the wheels turning, right? Because it will not be done in 5 days, and anyone who believes that they will have a flourishing relationship in 5 days is just delusional, if I may say so. But they need to be aware that it needs to start somewhere.
Exactly.
Right.
And that is why I create that challenge, or that workshop, whatever you want to call it. It's actually 5 days, hour a day, where we get to hang out and we start really kick-starting to get the ball rolling. And I think the women that's been on the challenges really walked away. They said, well, now at least I've got some guidance, I've got some direction. And they sort of, it feels that they've already started doing something. And there's something amazing about that, when you feel that you've been stuck, disconnected, and after 5 days, there's a feeling that there's almost some life coming back into you. And there's some sense of direction, and there's a pathway. And I cannot agree with you more. What happens in our lives is, there's YouTube, there's books, there's so many places that we can go and get more information. We can read articles, but that's knowledge. if you do not apply them, it's not going to transform your life. It's not going to bring the change that you desire. And what I do find is in challenges, in my one-on-one coaching processes that I go with it, and then there's also, I've got group coaching processes that I take women through as well. And then the value of that is there's somebody there that has been working with these things, have experienced these things, have got the shortcut, and they sort of help you to take the steps. But the important part is that they keep you accountable, because if we are not being kept accountable, we tend to lose momentum. We tend to fall back into old patterns very quickly.
Yeah.
And that's where I often get that people say, we've worked on this, and then we forget to work on it. And then we work on it, and then we forget to work on it, because it's not really been made part of you. You haven't integrated. You haven't got the tools and techniques that you sort of can just be, that you made your own, worked through the things, and you say, okay, I see there's a red flag, let me quickly address it. Oh, now there's a green flag. Oh, wow, let me give some more attention there. And those are, we become mindful. And that's the value of embarking on any of these development, really digging in processes that's available.
And yeah, knowledge is not the same as guidance. And
No.
of course, I will leave the link to your 5-day challenge in the description and in the show notes, and also all the other links where people can contact you and get to know you more will all be in the description. Thank you so much for being here. I
Wonderful.
enjoyed this conversation so much, and there are, of course, still questions open that we might be able to discuss in another interview. I would love that. Thank you so much for your insights.
That was super amazing, and I always love this. It lights me up. So I enjoy. I can talk for hours because it's just what I absolutely am so passionate about. Thank you for the opportunity. It was really lovely, and I would love to reconnect with you.